stones in here?
Oh, this is a huge cemetery. Huge. One of the oldest in Henderson County.
Really?
As soon as I get everybody up here, we'll start talking about it.
Is Troy Drake, the Drakes over there?
Every Drake in this county is related.
Okay.
End of story.
I ran into him about a week and a half ago, so I'll get him.
If you've got a Drake ancestor, you're related. Okay. All right, this is Ebenezer Baptist Church. This church was originally organized in 1816, making it the 5th oldest Baptist church in Henderson County. Now, that's not the 5th oldest church. I said the 5th oldest Baptist church in Henderson County. It originally, as you came down, you saw a cemetery on the other side of the road. The original first church, 1816, was over there where that cemetery is.
That's where all the early folks are?
No, the oldest graves are here. See, the early church was over there, and all the old graves are over in here. So then later on, people donated additional land where the church is now, and the parking lot over here, and donated land down there later. So they built a new church over here, and they've remodeled and built for the past since 1816, okay? So they're still building new church. So there's nothing architecturally old or significant about that building because they keep building new ones. I'm gonna try to get pictures on the website of one of the old white wooden churches, but that's what they're doing. So the oldest section of this cemetery is on this side of the road. When they moved the church over there and they began running out of some room here, they began burying people on the old church side. So the old church side is the more recent graves. That makes sense?
Yep.
Not only is this one of the oldest churches, it is the first church in this section of the county. The first church in the county, way back 1787, 88, was down in the old Mountain Page community that we do in June. The second oldest church in the county we're going to the site of today, Old French Broad, which was the very first church west of the Continental Divide in all of western North Carolina. And we're actually going to go to that site. That's west of the Continental Divide. So those were the same. Then we had Old Beulah out in the Etowah section that we'll be going to this spring. And Mud Creek out in the Flat Rock section, which we'll be doing probably next month. So this one was next. So it was the first Baptist church on this end of the county. That makes sense. The original family that owned the property that came in here in the late 1700s, and I'll have all this information on the website, was the Allen family. His actual name was George Allen, and he's who gave the land for the church. But the families that settled in this community from the mid-1780s up until 1810 are the Shipman family, the Allen family, the McMinn family, the Drake family, the Featherstone family, the Love family, and some Corn family, the Corns, and some of the Mills descendants. Note that the cemetery will contain very old graves of these early settlers and descendants of people who lived in the Clear Creek community. And some of them are Hill, Gillespie, Stepp, Halbert, Maxwell, Green, Dermid, Guerin, Collins, Deal, Thompson, Mintz, Williams, Lancaster, Newman, Wright, Jackson, Phillips, and many, many, many others. Those are just the preponderance of some of these descendants. There are 2 Revolutionary War soldiers buried in this cemetery. One is Jacob Shipman, and one is John Peter Corn. And they're both up that way, into the oldest section at the front up there near the church. Jacob Shipman, actually, if you look at our cemetery book, is the oldest marked grave in the county. But he really did not die here. His family had come in and started settling out here in this community. And he was going to move here with them. He was an old man. But he died in Rutherford County before they got him up here. So the legend, this is legend, we have no proof of this, is that they brought his body by wagon from Rutherford and buried him here because the family had moved up here and they wanted him buried near where they would then be living. Now that's the legend in the family. So when the DAR put up the Revolutionary War marker, they went ahead and put one here based on that legend. But we don't know 100% sure he's buried there. John Peter Corn, we do know is buried here. You're going to see as we drive through Clear Creek, lots of corn roads and corn mountains and corn names there. And this is the corn section of the county. And we know for a fact John Peter Corn is buried here. He has thousands of descendants in Henderson County. And his DAR marker is up there. We have in this cemetery one of our local men that died in World War II. He was killed in action over a bombing raid in Hamburg, Germany. That's Johnny Clayton. We have a guy buried in this cemetery that died in Korea, Edgar L. Green, killed in action in South Korea during the Korean War. We have Joe Herbert Webb buried here, who died in a police action in the Dominican Republic with the Marine Corps in 1965. If you remember, Lyndon Johnson sent the Marines down there. And Suzanne, your ancestor is here. Your grandfather. He was police chief from 1905 to 1906. William Bill Hill is buried here. We have several Spanish-American War veterans here. William G. Hill and Jesse Bishop Wright. And two black Spanish-American War veterans who were in this black unit that formed in the Spanish-American War and actually went through all kinds of prejudice and stuff over in Tennessee, and that is Mark Allen and Charles Featherstone.
Buffalo soldiers?
No. We have 14 Confederate veterans buried here. 14. And I've got them listed on this list, and I'll send it all to you and put it on the website later. They're the Capps, Collins, Corns, Couch, Dermid, Featherstone, Fletcher, Gilbert, Maxwell's, McMinn's, Shipman's. So that tells you an idea of these local families. The main thing I want to point out to you is this is one of those cemeteries where you are standing in the black section. Where you see these old fieldstones were slaves. Those old unmarked fieldstones are all slaves. You can go through here. These are all black people in the community. Anthony McMinn and I did a story, and one of the Mills descendants from the community did a story a few years back on black history in Henderson County. The Clear Creek community is has a large and strong black community. And so you're going to see descendants of the Featherstone slaves in this cemetery, of the Allen slaves, of the Shipman slaves, of the McMinn slaves. I said Allen. But you can go through all of these graves and the Mills, because, and I'll talk about this later, but Mills and Featherstone were best friends and intermarried, the families did, and shared slaves and sold slaves back and forth. So you're going to find a lot of black people in here with the last name of Mills. So you can see that through here. Some of these black graves they're as old or older than the whites, and a lot of them are slaves. And they're all descendants of slaves here in Henderson County.
How far does the black cemetery go?
Probably goes up right past that tree right there. Yeah, somewhere up into that area. So this is the black section. This is still an active cemetery. Descendants of these slaves are still using this cemetery. And the original descendants of the white people that founded the church are still using the cemetery. And one thing you have to remember is the Baptists, during slavery, the black slaves attended church in the same church with the whites in the same church. That's the way the Baptists did. They actually have in their church minutes the names of the slaves that were baptized and everything, and they sat right there in the same pews with the whites. That thing of separating those black and white Baptist churches did not occur until Reconstruction. So you're welcome to walk through and spend as much time here. This is going to be probably one of the little bit longer stops we have today. It is the largest church cemetery we're going to stop at today. And I hated that they're the longest stops early in the morning, but I apologize. So you can walk through. And Drake descendants are in here too, Bob.
He lives a long time.
At Moore's Grove United Methodist Church. It also has a cemetery over there. That church was formed in the early 1890s. So it's much younger than this site, but it was pre-20th century. Of course, they've changed it and added on to it and rebuilt. The oldest graves in that cemetery date from 1894. And that family has some of the same families. I mean, that cemetery. The Reimers, Phillips, Corn, Harper, Mintz, Hill, Gilreath, Elliott, Vaughn, Guerin, Justice, Johnson, Featherstone, Lyda, Edney, Green, Costans, Cagle, and others. So all these old local families. So that's in continuous use over there. They have a Spanish-American War veteran over there, a Union veteran over there, a local guy that switched sides and left the Confederacy and joined the Union, and 5 Confederate graves over there. So that one is a historical cemetery too. It's harder to get to because it being centered in the middle of everything. But that's Moore's Grove United Methodist Church.
How many graves were displaced with the road, and what happened with that?
They haven't displaced any graves with the road.
With the road that comes on?
That was the old Indian Trail. That was an old Indian Trail. That was one of the very first roads that came in Henderson County. A lot of our earliest settlers came this way.
That was a drover's trail.
It was a very ancient Indian trail. Ancient. It then became an early path for settlers to come into the county from South Carolina and from the Spartanburg area and Rutherford in those areas. And then later on it wasn't so much a drover's road. It was used a little bit as a drover's road, not too much as a drover's road because it's too steep going down.
There's a way up and down hill.
Yeah. And it's going to cross Green River at the old Peter Guy's Bridge.
Howard Gap.
Howard Gap. Yeah. They didn't name it Howard Gap though till much later, but it was an ancient Indian path.
The DAR sites, how are they identified?
They have DAR markers, and I've been wandering around and I haven't seen the DAR
There's
markers.
one over by the corn grave right over here. It's got a DAR.
Where I was paused there, that last pause, that's John Peter Corn. And then the first place close to the cedar tree back there,
Yeah.
that's Jacob Shipman.
They're right back over in there then.
Yeah.
Okay.